Tensions continue to escalate at the southern border with Mexico. We heard a few days ago from Homeland Security that the Migrant Caravan was planning to rush the border, but now it seems there is some confirmation. An aid worker in Tijuana has said the migrants are planning what he called a human stampede to storm through the border. Now, this aid worker is there to help the migrants. So again, this seems to be confirmation that what Homeland Security reported is true. In response to this, we are hearing that Donald Trump said if Mexico can't get a hold on the border, he will shut the entire thing down, with some sources saying he already did, or that he's threatening to close the entire border. I think it's fair to say at this point that with all of the news about what's going on with the Migrant Caravan and with the political division, with many people saying allow them in and grant them asylum, and many others saying do not, it is encouraging people. It is encouraging people in Central America to make the trip up here to try and get in on whatever is happening. We're also learning now from El Universal, a Mexican newspaper, a sixth caravan has been stopped. Yes, 6 caravans now. I think with all this press, many people are realizing there's a chance to come to the United States. But with Mexico offering job fairs and offering asylum to many of these people, I think it's fair to say these are economic migrants. In fact, in response to being stopped by Mexico, members of the 6th caravan said they can't go back because of poverty, which stands to reason many of these people are not actually seeking asylum, but they're looking for better jobs. So today, let's take a look at the latest news and figure out what's actually going on the southern border and whether or not this human stampede news is legitimate. But before we get started, please head over to patreon.com/Timcast if you want to support my work. Patrons are the backbone of the content I create, so if you like these videos and you want to see more, then head over to patreon.com/Timcast and become a patron today. From Fox News, Migrant Caravan members may be planning human stampede at U.S. border aid group. Some members of the Migrant Caravan who have spent the past month traveling from Central America through Mexico to reach the U.S. border are talking about crossing the border en masse as a way to provoke the Trump administration, an aid group has claimed. They have that intention, Sergio Tamay, a founder of Angels Without Borders, a group helping the migrants, told Telemundo 20 in San Diego. I believe that thousands could make that jump. At least 3,000 migrants have already arrived in Tijuana, a border city across from San Diego, California, the past 2 weeks. The federal government estimates the number of migrants could grow to 10,000 in the coming weeks or months. Those already in the city have camped out in tents, slept on dirt fields or under bleachers, or are staying in overcrowded shelters throughout the city as they wait to figure out their next steps. But some are growing impatient and believe their best option is to plan a mass crossing. Most of us, yes, we want to be on the other side, Jorge Molina, a Honduran migrant, told Telemundo. Some want to jump over the wall, others want to go another way, and others want to wait and see what kind of response they get. Fox News highlights that border agents have already arrested dozens of migrants trying to illegally cross the border. Tijuana Councilman Manuel Menares said a mass border would further strain economic relations with the U.S. Perhaps they mean mass border crossing. A human stampede would be an immediate provocation to the U.S. and justify Donald Trump to impact the binational dynamics of the economy. And this news has come shortly after we heard from the San Diego Union Tribune. A small group breaks away from Caravan to press within 500 feet of the U.S. border in Tijuana. According to the Union Tribune, the group is actually much larger, and we did see reporting from Fox News as well that the group is actually in the 6,000s, not 3,000. They say a small faction of the larger group, 6,219 Central American migrants in Tijuana, slowly and peacefully pushed within 500 feet of the U.S. border Thursday, while armed Mexican federal police held a barrier near the pedestrian crossing. Asking for more humane conditions in the overflowing Benito Juarez shelter and trying to present themselves to United States immigration authorities for asylum. The group carried white flags as they marched from the migrant camp to the foot of the U.S. pedestrian bridge, a distance of about 5 city blocks. Meanwhile, U.S. Customs and Border Protection made it clear they weren't taking a day off by briefly shutting down vehicle traffic at the San Ysidro port of entry for a large-scale operational readiness exercise. They are increasing enforcement presence with helicopters, additional Border Patrol agents, and U.S. military troops. They make reference to a man, Joseph, waving a large white flag as a reminder for the migrants to remain calm and peaceful. When asked why he was carrying the flag, he answered, "Because my heart is at peace." Angel Mejia, 27, said he left behind his wife and son in Honduras to seek a better life and earn money for his family. "We don't have a life in Honduras. If we work, we can eat. And I don't need much more than that. Just my friends and my family and a job so we can eat." This man admitted he is among those U.S. and Mexican authorities are highlighting as having a criminal past. But he said he was involved decades ago in petty crimes like shoplifting that shouldn't amount to a death sentence in Honduras, where he said gangs won't leave him alone. I don't know the exact number of asylum seekers. I don't know the exact number of people who actually deserve asylum. But it's fair to say that The LA Times, reported by Vox, as well as the San Diego Union Tribune, there are many people who are simply economic migrants. This man that we're reading about actually left his family behind to go find work in the US, even at a time when we know that Tijuana is offering a job fair for those who are in Tijuana and need work. But I think the other thing we can see here is that when Homeland Security is saying that the migrants are planning to rush the border, when an aid worker has given a similar statement, and now we're hearing that a small group is actually pressing it closer within the border, I think it's possible we might see a rush on the border at some point, which could be extremely dangerous when we're hearing that Trump has signed orders authorizing the use of lethal force. This story from Bloomberg: Trump says he closed Mexican border and authorized lethal force. President says nobody will enter the U.S. illegally. President says he signed order on border crossing 2 days ago. President Donald Trump said Thursday that he signed an order to close the U.S. border with Mexico, adding that he's authorized troops to use lethal force against migrants who attempt to enter the U.S. if they have to. Trump told reporters at his Mar-a-Lago resort in Palm Beach, Florida, claiming without evidence that at least 500 criminals are among migrants trying to enter the U.S. So I'm not going to let the military be taken advantage of. I have no choice. Do I want that to happen? Absolutely not. But you're dealing with rough people. Often we hear news outlets like to say without evidence. And while I think it's fair to say that there's no direct evidence outside of a DHS statement that there are 500 plus criminals, we do know from Associated Press reporting that there are people being arrested. According to this report, many also say the actions of a few are tarnishing the image of the roughly 4,000 migrants who are camped in Tijuana. In the past week, city officials have arrested 36 Caravan members for drug possession, public intoxication, disturbing the peace, and resisting police, and said they would be deported to their home countries. We know that several dozen people in the Caravan have been arrested. We know that according to the Union Tribune, one of these men actually admitted to being a petty criminal. Now, again, a petty criminal, however you want to interpret that, the fact remains that when the DHS says there are about 500 criminals, they're not specifying the severity of the crime. So we do have at least one individual acknowledging yes. We've also heard from residents of Mexico that there are criminals here. So do you choose to trust the government? Well, DHS also said there was going to be a human stampede, and now we're hearing from aid workers who are working with the migrants. They've actually talked about doing this. Do you want to trust the government? I don't know. It's up to you. But I do find it interesting how the media picks and chooses what they trust from the government. Often there will be a statement released by a government official, and they'll just say, yes, that's true, or it's not. Yet in this circumstance, whatever they're saying clearly is without evidence. According to the CBC, they said, they've come here to create disorder. Migrant Caravan faces hostility on both sides of U.S.-Mexico border. Some Tijuana locals are no happier than Donald Trump with presence of migrants. And this is a story we've heard time and time again over the past several weeks. They say many of the migrants in Tijuana were aware of Donald Trump's hostility towards the Caravan, which he called an invasion, but were dismayed to hear that Trump's views are shared by some locals, such as Pablo Romero. For decades, the mariachi musician has been playing guitar for pesos on Tijuana beaches. Migrants from the south are part of life, he says, but he believes these massive caravans are bad news. There are lots of pickpockets who are robbing, taking advantage of being here, so they're doing more bad than good, Romero says. His sentiments were echoed by Tijuana's mayor, who called the migrants rowdy and unclean undesirables, and was seen wearing a red hat bearing the phrase, "Make Tijuana great again." There are residents in Tijuana who support the migrants, and there are also many people who live in Tijuana who are protesting. But my concern here is, if you're going to claim there's no evidence that there's criminals, but we're hearing from residents of Tijuana, we're hearing from the mayor, we're hearing from Trump and DHS, at what point do you have to say, okay, all of these people directly involved with what's going on are saying they're criminals and we should probably lean in that direction? They often say the simple solution tends to be the correct one. And I believe it would be ridiculous to assume there's some kind of conspiracy within the Trump administration with Tijuana to label the migrants as criminals for some reason, just to stop them from coming in the U.S. Maybe they think that Tijuana is secretly working with Trump because Trump is paying them off, but that just sounds like a crazy conspiracy. When you realize there's something much simpler, that's probably the right solution. This is a really strange situation if you were to ask me, because it seems extremely political for whatever reason. But what's really interesting on top of all of it is that more caravans keep trying to come. From El Universal, and forgive the poor Google translation, they say between frenzy slowdown, step of 6th caravan in Chiapas. Migrants are detained by federal and migration agents. We cannot return to our country, there is poverty. They say in the midst of pushing, jerking, crying, and sadness, the 6th caravan of Central American migrants was stopped by agents of the National Institute of Migration and riot police of the federal police, who detained them after entering irregular to Mexican territory by the Suchiate River. The story is very poorly translated, but what they're saying is that a 6th caravan now, 6, That's a large number of caravans who keep trying to enter into Mexico to come to the US. This group was about 300 people. They illegally entered Mexico and were detained. With all of the press and the idea that if they come now, there will be people supporting them politically, many more people are being encouraged to form caravans and make their way to the US, exacerbating the humanitarian crisis. I don't know if there will be a real solution here. I don't know how this will resolve itself, but I can say a few things. The press was primarily wrong about the time frame for when the migrants would reach Tijuana, because it happened much sooner than everyone predicted. They said the migrants are thousands of miles away, 1,000 miles away, they'll never get here. And now 6,000 plus people are already there, and it's only been about a month or so since this became a major press issue. So long as people keep talking about this, and so long as people in the US are supporting the migrants, I believe we will see more caravans form and many more people try to make their way to the US, and this can be dangerous. Because if the migrants do plan their human stampede, and Trump has authorized lethal force, I can only imagine the kind of devastation we will see, and I hope it doesn't come to that. But I don't know if there will be a political solution, because this seems to be another battle in the cold civil war, with neither side willing to give up ground. Many people on the left are criticizing Trump, saying it's all nonsense. But the humanitarian crisis is escalating in Tijuana, and something needs to be done about it. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and we'll keep the conversation going. How do you feel about what's going on? What do you think would happen if they really do try that human stampede? And how do you feel about the media once again saying there is no evidence of criminals being harbored by the caravan? Comment below, we'll keep the conversation going. You can follow me on Twitter at Timcast. Stay tuned, new videos every day at 4 p.m. and I'll have more videos up on my second channel, youtube.com/TimcastNews, starting at 6 p.m. Thanks for hanging out, and I will see you all next time.